Hey, this is Brooks. I've got some time, I've got an idea, and I've got a cup of tea, because I'm still a little sick. So let's forge a character using boxes only. No items. Final destination. This week I wanted to challenge myself to create a character using only boxes and square shape language. And if you're unfamiliar with shape language, it's basically the visual vocabulary that we use when we design characters. And usually it's made up of a lot of round and circular shape language, as well as triangular or dynamic angular shape language, in addition to the square. Now, square shape language does get used quite a bit in conjunction with the other shape languages, but using it on its own turned out to be quite a challenge, and I kind of knew that going into this. That's why at first here you see me just laying down a couple of practice ideas and tests using just these straight lines. Right away I found the art that I was making to be really stunted and almost like I was regressing. Something about it reminded me of these very angular and boxy drawings that I'd see kids do back in grade school when they were sort of just figuring out construction and using dimension. What's interesting is that a lot of the appeal that we naturally associate with characters comes from the round shape language. So if you're excluding that from your work, you have to figure out other ways to mimic or suggest that same shape with just squares. Of course, none of this is new to pixel artists and voxel artists. They're always using simple squares and cubes to denote things like round shapes and arcs in their work. Character designs like the one of Carl Fredricksen from Up and Superman and Batman from the Bruce Timm animated series are famous examples of characters who use a predominantly square shape language. But those don't use squares exclusively. There's a lot of nuances and details that are also round and angular with them as well. So I figured inevitably the best choice I could make for my square design was going to be a robot, and one that was very industrial looking. It would make sense for him to be square, and I decided to make him a little bit modular as well, as a bit of a throwback to old Transformers toys. When I began this challenge, I told myself that as long as I laid out the predominant shapes of the character as squares, that at some point later on in the process, adding details, I would allow myself some round shapes. But actually, the way that this character turned out, I didn't necessarily end up using any. One thing that I realized using just these flat square shapes for this character, it was really easy to render him. I simply chose a color palette that was a very plastic toy, kind of like that old Transformer look, and chose a few tones that would hit the other edges of the same surfaces. And by that point, I didn't really need to do a bunch of shading to denote the details of the character because they were already kind of all there. After I laid down all of the color, I added an extra little sketch there of him transformed into a little box, and I liked the idea that maybe he wasn't able to lift a ton, but these were useful to keep around and you'd sort of stow them away like shoe boxes in your warehouse. Or maybe they could function as some kind of high-risk construction robots that could weld or do things in hazardous or toxic areas. The best analogy that I can make for what it was like to do this challenge, it was like I was trying to type full sentences using just the right half of the keyboard, or the left half, whichever side has more vowels. And combined with the fact that I've been sick for a week, it takes me forever to get back into the swing of things when I haven't drawn for a while. This challenge proved to be pretty difficult, but I'm not complaining. It was a lot of fun. If nothing else, it gets you really to appreciate the value of those other shape languages, and it helps to kind of work under those restrictions to think about what it's like to create pixel and voxel art as well. If you missed it in my last video, I just announced that as a thanks for reaching 50,000 subscribers, I'm going to be releasing 2 videos a week from here on out. One character design forge video a week, and one like this, one forge a character video, where we're walking through the design and art process. If you'd like to support me in this channel and get some things in return, you can go to patreon.com/bageldenizen and find out more about that. And my username is bageldenizen across Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.